Well, welcome back, everybody. Here we are. We're going to be talking about a new album coming out, a debut album by Brian Weitz, Geologist. You know him from Animal Collective. But, Brian, is it safe to say that this is a debut album? I feel like we've had a couple debuts, but this is maybe like the definitive debut, right?
Yeah, sure. I think so. I mean, it's definitely the one I thought about it differently than I thought about the other releases I put out. So sure. I guess so. Yeah. I'm happy with that. Seems to be the way people want to talk about it. And I guess, yeah, if someone asked me to pick one that I would say was the first, again, just because of the way I thought about it, I'd probably agree.
Nice.
Well, the name of the album is Can I Get a Pack of Camel Lights, which, hell of a title. I think we all pretty much instantly loved it as soon as we heard that, because
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
there's no way we could have anticipated that. But
Yeah.
the story behind it's kind of interesting. I never would have known that if you hadn't told the world in your little blurb when you first announced it that you were a smoker for a number of years, but not for a while now.
What did I say in the blurb? Like on Instagram?
It was
or something?
something like you smoke. It was like it was a question that you asked like for 2,000 days, and then it's been 3,500 days since then, or something along those lines.
Drag City, one of the guys at Drag City writes the press releases, and he is a really great creative writer. And he doesn't like things to be too literal. So I can't totally remember what he said or what I said, but I was a smoker a long time. We all were at some point in Animal Collective as like teenagers and into our 20s. At that time, I was the last one to quit, but other guys have started back up since then and quit again. And I don't think any of us are smokers now, but I was definitely like the heavier one, at least back then. So yeah, I quit a couple weeks before Merriweather came out. End of 2008. Yeah, it was like again, I can't totally remember what Ryan wrote in the press release or what I said. Yeah, it was just a matter of thinking about. I guess related to what you said, is this the first solo record or something? And all the other ones I've put out have been, in some cases with the last one, none of the music was stuff that like originated from me. And then with the other two things, they were more like recordings of live stuff I did without the intent of like making a record from it. And whenever people ask me like, why haven't you done one? And I'd be like, well, I kind of did, but I was just sort of tired of having that conversation. And with this, I came up with the title like after I decided to make the record, but I think before I tracked it. It's hard for me to remember if it was like that or I think it was after I can't remember. It might have been like somewhere in between tracking and mixing. And I decided because I had a live recording of this material and I was just going to do the same thing I always did. But then when I was listening back to it, I started hearing other parts or things that I wished were different. I started hearing ways other musicians could be a part of it and parts they could play. And that's never really happened to me before. So I decided I think I might have a record in me, like in the traditional sense. And I was like, oh, and then I won't have to have that conversation anymore. Like I won't have to say this thing that almost become like a canned response. And I just thought about other things I had said a million times in my life. Every day I would go to the store and be like, can I get a pack of Camel Lights? I don't know. It's a little corny and self-helpy, but if you think about quitting smoking, which was a really good change in my life, I've had a few since then, which also relates to the title, was a good change. And it's sort of like if you don't want something to be true or you don't want to say a thing anymore, what actions do you have to take to do it? So it kind of relates to it in that way.
I also used to be a heavy smoker, so I definitely get a sense of that. And I want to ask you, Brian, because I ask everyone who was a smoker, do you sometimes have dreams where you're smoking cigarettes and you feel super guilty when you wake up? You're
Yes,
what have I done?
Totally. Yeah. You wake up and you're like, fuck, all those, But I had those more before I've had a few, 5 or so maybe since I quit, but it was there was a 10 or 11 years of no cigarettes whatsoever. And I feel really good about all the ones there's one I regret since I quit. There's one that I smoked that I was that was not okay. And it was ridiculous too, because it was a Marlboro light that somebody just gave me. When I found out that my wife's school that she teaches at was maybe gonna close. And we at the end of the school year, but this was so it was we were a month out from having no health insurance and all this shit. And I was on tour with motherfuckers. And somebody saw me in the state I was in and they were smoking a cigarette, and I was just like, "Can I get one of those?" And I was a Marlboro Light, and it sucked. And I mean, I
Not the same as
appreciate.
Camel Lights.
Yeah, I don't mean to be like ungrateful, but I was like, as soon as it was done, I was like, I wish I hadn't done it. But all the other ones I've enjoyed. But in that like first 10 years, every time I had a dream about smoking, I woke up feeling like really upset, like, and then that moment of like realizing you didn't do it
Yeah,
is such a great moment.
it's so true.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing that we all experience that. It's like it's somewhere in the back of the smoker's head, you know. It's just like you want to, but you'll feel bad about it.
I still always want to. When I smell it,
Like when I quit smoking, I went like I smoked cigarettes so much it became like a reference point as to like who I was. You know, like people would be like, "Oh, you know Jordan? I think he's the guy who's like smoking cigarettes all the time." Like, "Oh yeah, I know that guy."
yeah, me too.
So it's like it was a pretty big lifestyle change, but I did I did quit like cold turkey,
Yeah.
and it was a weird like adjustment period. But I found that
You didn't do the patch or anything like that, or
no, I didn't.
break down?
I tried like smoking. There was like these e-cigarette, these like disposable e-cigarette things that would have nicotine in them,
Yeah.
and I was smoking them, but they didn't feel like they weren't heavy enough. The smoke wasn't heavy like a cigarette smoke. So I was like, this just feels bad, and I'm still spending a lot of money. Like I think those e-cigarettes were more expensive than cigarettes, if you can believe it. So I was like, I don't know if this is really helping me or anything. I even went as far as to like I read online that if you just start putting things that are cigarette shaped in your mouth, like a breadstick or like a baby carrot, and just go through the motions of pretending to smoke it, that can help. So I always thought because I actually did that, and I thought it'd be so funny for the outside observer to see me walking out onto my balcony with like a carrot in my mouth and pretending to smoke it for like 5 minutes and then walk back inside. They'd probably be like, this guy's lost his mind. But
I don't know if that would have worked for me. It was definitely I mean, I like the act of it, but the nicotine. The first day I didn't smoke, that like I woke up and like I didn't have one, or maybe I had. I remember like my old house that my wife and I had, it like didn't have like an awning over the front or the back, and we were like living like city like row homes, and it was like December and it was like freezing rain outside, and I was standing there smoking it still, and I was just like, this is so pathetic. And that was like the end of that pack, and I was like, I'm not buying another one. This is it. Like I fucking quit. And then I was like having dinner with my parents later that night, and I remember talking to my mom, and I was like, it doesn't even sound like she's speaking English right now. Like it like I could not focus on anything. I felt insane. And so I went and I bought like a thing of the patch and put it on, and within like 30 minutes I was like, I feel amazing.
Yeah, that's wild. That's funny. I mean, everyone has such different approaches, but like, yeah, it's funny that you say that you still like the smell of cigarette smoke, because I think I actively made sure that I went the opposite direction, and I became like that guy who's like walking down the sidewalk and someone's smoking a cigarette. I'm like, how dare you? This is everyone's air, you know? And it's
Yeah,
like
I
before
follow
used
in
to...
like the skunk in the old like Looney Tunes cartoons.
Right on. Well, let's talk about this album then.
Yeah, going back to the original debut of some of the songs live back in, I want to say like fall 2023, like around the time Isn't It Now was coming out.
Yeah, it was that week. Yeah.
Yeah, the songs had much more of like an electronic side to them, like a lot more like heavy sort of house drums. So it's interesting that it sort of evolved from much more of that to like an organic, like you said, sort of like almost band sound. Even though this is considered a solo album, it kind of draws a parallel to Noah's recent album Sinister Grift, where it's under the name Geologist in your case, but you've got AV appears on this too. He plays bass on some of the songs, and Mikey Powers from Sham, he plays some strings, and your son Merrick plays guitar.
Shane from Sham is on there too. Plays clarinet on a few tracks.
There you
Oh,
go.
nice.
Was there like a sort of like concerted decision where you were wanting to go down to like Drop of Sun and kind of just hang out and collab? And like how far along in your process of like having these songs did you sort of transition to that?
It was pretty. I mean, you saw that first tour, Greg. I remember talking to you in Dallas. That was like the third or fourth show probably ever of it. In terms of it was more electronic. The idea was just like my two favorite things to play right now, modular synth and hurdy-gurdy, together for the live set. Sometimes the hurdy-gurdy feeds back, so I have to keep it a little lower. So that could depend on the night you saw it. And in those early days, people were saying to me, like, you're leaning a little more on the electronics than, like, if I asked for constructive feedback, which I don't often do, but sometimes people were like, I would like to hear more of the hurdy-gurdy. And I think I was just maybe nervous that, like, it was a little shrill, because my instrument's not, like, the best instrument. And just sometimes, like, it's very, like, it can be moody day to day. So maybe you just saw, like, a heavier electronic one where I was like, I just need to make the mix a little bit more like this. I always wanted it to be kind of balanced, but Dave and I played a show like a week after that in Miami, and we had like the best sound guy. I'm spacing on his name right now. It was at this place called either Gramps or Grumps in Miami. And the sound, it was just like one of those guys that's like, you're like, I wish everybody in this profession was like you. He was like so nice, the best vibes, helped us load in, helped us load out. Like, and we were like I don't know if we were in South Beach, but it was like the most hectic loadout ever, like just because of Miami partying on a Friday night. He made a recording of the set and it sounded really good. And I said to myself, like, all right, now I have like the release, because I was still in that mindset of like, I don't know if I want to take up people's time or like, it's not like record labels have like, even when like Domino would like come to see me play solo because I was opening for Noah or something, like they didn't seem that interested. I was just like, I just kind of like doing it low stakes or whatever. And I sent it to Adam McDaniel, who's like a close friend of mine. He runs Drop a Sun. Our wives are best friends. They were college roommates. And so like, he's kind of like a second father to my kids, like, or an uncle. I sent it to him to be like, can you master, like, I might want to master this. But then as I was listening back and I sent it to him, I was like, actually, like I said earlier, I hear parts now. Like, I kind of hear a bass line, I kind of hear it, like how a live drummer could fit into this to like make the beat have more changes, because my modular stuff are just like cycles. And then even my own hurdy-gurdy parts, because most of that tour, I had like some foundational riffs of the songs, but a lot of times I was just improvising in the key that I knew would match the key the modular stuff was in. And I was hearing phrases that I was like, well, I like what I did there. I don't like what I did there. Or I like what I did there, but I wish it followed this other thing. And I just got more critical of that recording that I was going to have Adam master for the cassette. And I said to him, we always do New Year's together, like our two families. And I think it was around New Year's, like, which would have been a couple months after that. Dave and I were doing this soundtrack for that. What was it?
Bodyguard of Lies?
Yes, for that documentary. So like I had to, we knew that was going to start immediately after that tour. We were like in that for a few months, and I had left the stuff, and Adam was like, did you decide what you want to do with that? And I was like, actually, like, when do you have like a week when I could come down? And then when I said to him, like, I have ideas for other parts, not necessarily like I knew, like I didn't tell Dave what to play on Tonic or Compact Mirror, but I just told him like the vibe I wanted, like I was like, hey, I'd like something like this. Do you think you could write something like this? And he was like, yeah. And, I could write something close and then I'd give it to you and you can chop it up and do what you want with it. So like I had ideas like that. So since Adam had the studio and I knew I could stay with him and I knew Dave could play bass on this, it was everything I wanted. I knew like I wanted clarinet and cello a little, just in terms of maybe relating to old like European Renaissance dance music or something, and like 30-year band. I don't know if you know the 30-year band, like a 60s, 70s British band, like a big influence on me and on the record. Dave's also a fan of their stuff. I wanted like the Sham guys to help me bring that vibe. And then I said to Adam, like, well, I hear like 3 different identities of drummers, like, and I don't know a drummer that can do all 3 things. And he was like, well, I got, it's just Asheville just has so many musicians and so many great people. And he was like, well, I know this, like Aliana doesn't live there. Aliana Kalaba, who plays drums on 3 of the tracks. He was like, but she's going to be visiting some friends and she's actually crashing at the studio. So she'll just be there. Like, so I asked her, yeah, that was really, it was just going to be the 3 drummers and Dave and I and the Sham guys. Merrick, my son, is on it because I was just going to play this little like rinky dink pattern on this cheap guitar that I thought sounded trashy in like a way that I liked. And then like when I got in the car and started driving to Asheville, he came home from school later that day and called me and was like, you know, you left the guitar here. And I was like, oh, fuck. And it was important to me that it was like that guitar that got played, not just like the part. I just wanted like the sound of that guitar. So he played it for me. He had only been playing guitar. He taught himself on that guitar like a few months prior to it. So Adam Lyon, who plays vibraphone, that was literally like I had an idea for vibraphone on 3 tracks, and I had just like decided not to do it because I was like, I don't have that much money to spend on this and studio time. Like, and when I got to Drop a Sun, there was like a set of you call them a set of vibraphones or whatever you would say. Vibes, yeah.
Vibes, bro.
And they were just there. And Adam was like, Adam McDaniel said like, oh, that's this cool vibraphone player. He and I were jamming the other night for this like noise project we have. And he's coming to pick them up like tomorrow. And I was like, well, I had actually like had ideas for vibes on 3 songs. And so like when he came back to pick them up, we were just like, can you stay? And he had never heard the songs before, but he just, you know, I told him like kind of what I wanted. And most of those people I just let improvise, you know, and sometimes with the drums, I had to be like, no, there's a change here, or direct them, or, you know, play the beat that's a little bit more like this style or something. But a lot of times I just like to let people express themselves after they had only heard the songs like once or twice, you know. Mm-hmm. That's how that came to me. There's never more than like 2 or 3 people, I think, plus me on one track. And we never played it live. It's a little bit more like Noah's record in that way too, where it's like Noah did all his parts and then people sent him stuff to be inserted in there, you know?
Right. Did you use your own sound effects pack that you made for him?
I did.
On any of this? Nice.
I did. Yeah. Because he didn't, there's a lot of it he didn't use. You know, I mean, I gave him 300 things and I actually don't even know, like, I think at the point I was doing this, he was like he hadn't used any of them. And Josh called me and was like, hey, we need you to make a sound that like does this, this, and this. I can't remember if I told you guys this one. I know I spoke to you not that long ago.
This is your 4th time on the show, so it's very possible.
Please stop me if I've told you something before.
We won't. It's go right ahead.
Josh called me and was like, hey, we need a sound that does like such and such. And I was like, dude, I'm like making my own record. Like, I don't have time. And he was like, oh, we just figured it's like, this is the kind of sound you can do in your sleep. And I was like, I probably did it. Like, go through those samples. Like, I could send Noah 300 samples. Like, I imagine what you're looking for somewhere in there. And it was. And then it was like, after that, Josh was like, man, like once we started digging in, now you're like all over the record. But at the time, I thought Noah had, as far as I knew, he had decided not to do the idea that he initially had that I made the sample pack for. And he had like pivoted to this other idea that he didn't need them for. So I was like, well, I guess I have them. I'm going to use a bunch of them. And then since then, it's been a little bit of like Josh has used some for his new songs and like some. So we've had to be like, has anyone used this one yet? and there's been like one, I think, where it's like that, like Josh and I maybe both used, and I can't, maybe not. I can't remember, but we've had to like double check now because 3 people are pulling from that sample pack.
We brought up the fact that you've been on the show a number of times, and we're always grateful. When you were on the show talking about a Shaw deal, you mentioned that like you had just finished tracking this record like right before we did that interview, like that week. And sure enough, when you guys sent us the advanced copy, it's dated January 13th of last year. So
yeah, that was when we finished mastering it. Yeah, so
yeah.
I finished it, a couple of weeks before Shaw Deal came out.
Well, yeah, it's cool that Drag City put this one out too, and that you didn't have to go looking for another label. Seems like y'all have a good relationship going, and
yeah, I mean, this was mixed before they even. So they said they wanted to put out Shaw Deal like a long time ago, not long after I made it, and then it was more a matter of like talking to Doug to just make sure like he liked all the titles on it, and that took a year and a half. And so like I made this record and it was mixed. It just wasn't mastered before Doug even decided on all the titles for Shaw Deal. So, and then it happened to be the week that I mixed Camel Lights and Doug finalized the titles that like they were both ready for Drag City. And I sent this to Drag City and I was like, hey, this is weird. Like, cause they were getting a little like, do you guys want to put out Shaw Deal with us or not? And I was like, we do. We just like, Doug and I can't agree on titles. and the conversation's taken a while. I'm not joking. It was the year and a half almost. Then like they were both ready, and Drag City was like, well, I guess we should do Shaw Deal first. That's what we've all been waiting for and whatever. And I was like, well, I just want to like get going with Camel Lights too. And they were like, can you like please just like focus on one thing at a time? And so they did that, and then it took them a while to decide like when they wanted to release Camel Lights. Drag City is like kind of run by committee, so like not everybody was on the same page in terms of like what to do with it. It's like a half-ass double record, like it's 3 sides of vinyl, and that's not easy to do. So it took us a while, but it's been ready to go for a minute. We're kind of hoping I won't be sick of playing it when I go on tour.
And didn't you say last time when you were talking about that there was also other records that you had almost like in the can?
I think so. That was probably the Motherfuckers record.
Right.
I don't know if it was like solo records, but I have like something not like a more like ambient drone thing that's going to be announced in a couple months. Just another cassette sort of a thing. That was like, yeah, that was ready ish. It was like tracked anyway. And then, yeah, I still have a few other things that like one of the things that's in the can that you guys will hear about in a few months. It's not like a full length Animal Collective or full band Animal Collective thing. Yeah, I still have a few things, but I was probably referring to. I think whenever Shaw Deal came out, I remember like I was finalizing the mix for the Motherfuckers record, and I had recorded this. I mean, I think I posted about it. Like I do these. I've done a couple modular synth performances with my friend's Telescope. He has an observatory out in California, and Telescope has a light sensor on it that runs to a voltage amplifier that you can boost to the level that it becomes control voltage for a synth. So we had recorded that on a full moon, and that was one of the things as well.
Yeah, that was cool. That's called the Sirens. Was that what it was called?
Yeah, that's what he calls it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was sick.
I'm not the only synthesizer player he's done it with. Yeah, he and I have known each other since we were like longer than the Animal Collective guys by years.
Wow.
We grew up in Philadelphia together. We were in the same like youth scene of kids that liked hockey and played ice hockey. Then he and I stopped playing and took a different path.
So this ambient drone thing that you're talking about, does that have anything to do with this instrument that you've been seen playing? I forget the name of it.
Oh no, the drone thing's related to the Telescope. Yeah. No, that other thing. It's in its case right now. I haven't figured out what I want to do. I love playing it, and I've used it on some projects as like a one like element of something. I thought it might become the next hurdy-gurdy thing, but that one time I played it out in public, it didn't really go as I had hoped. So it didn't sound like what it sounds like when I do it in my headphones. So I'm back to the drawing board with it.
Fair enough.
Maybe you'll get into the Beam.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Oh, cool.
We talked a little bit about, track titles for a Shaw Deal. We got track titles on Camel Lights. We talked a little bit about the album title itself, but let's go through some of the tracks. So starting off, track 1, we got Oracle Road. I sort of had an interpretation as to why it might be called this, and tell me if I'm totally wrong or if I'm somewhere in the right ballpark here, but I so got this vibe of like, like those scenes in movies where there's like a shaman that's doing like an ayahuasca, like a guided ayahuasca trip or something. I keep thinking of that scene in Natural Born Killers, and I like most things in life, I can't remember what actually happens in a movie versus what The Simpsons did to parody it. But I feel like in that movie they did some drug, or maybe it was a snake bite or something, but they have like that kind of shaman character that's kind of guiding them through the trip. But I feel like there's like these percussive, shakers and stuff like that. And when I hear that in Oracle Road, I'm like, this feels so much like it's soundtracking one of those scenes. Is that
Ryan Austin, who plays the Hamburg Cut? He's definitely like that kind of a guy. But that's not really like related to the title so much. It is kind of related to a movie scene a little. Well, Oracle Road is a road in Tucson, and it's like the main highway road that I would drive in and out of Tucson when I lived there. And I lived at this place like 45 minutes outside of town, but there was nothing really out there. So I would go into town a lot, especially at night, to go see bands and stuff. So the record is like, I always wanted to make a record that would kind of like soundtrack that drive and like relate to my time in Tucson. And so that's the way I sequenced this record. And even like relating to the smoking stuff, like when I would like, it was when I lived there, it was like before iPods or anything, or, you know, so like I had to pick like a tape or a CD to actually like put on to drive back out to the desert. Like I had this thing about like a good record is like a 3 cigarette record, you know, like you smoke a cigarette when you start the record, and then there's one in the middle, and then there's one for the last track. And so it's just like, that's why it's called that. It's just like sort of setting off on the drive. And it's, even though like in my head it's at night, there's this horror movie. It's like an 80s slasher movie. Fuck it. I should have been prepared. It's like the killer is like a hi-fi sound, like a hi-fi system installer. Do you know this movie? And it takes place in Arizona. Actually, it takes place, I think, in Phoenix, but maybe Tucson. I think it takes place in Tucson.
The killer is a hi-fi installer.
Yeah, he's like a hi-fi system installer, and
Okay.
and that sort of plays into the thing. And I think one of the guys from Pink Floyd maybe like was involved in the soundtrack, like the drummer. I don't know. I remember like showing it to Adam McDaniel and being like, I almost like want to make a track that like, since it's like Arizona influence or whatever, like you could almost like take out this music and put this on top of it, and it would work. I wanted to make a car record, you know. So.
And is the cover of the album the picture of that road?
I wish it was. My friend Izzy, she's a really talented painter, but she only paints from life. She has to be looking at something to paint it. She went out to Joshua Tree with this band Weak Signal, or California, this band Weak Signal, who are friends of ours in New York. She was out with them in California, and when she was there, she did some really beautiful paintings of Joshua Tree, and I liked them a lot. And so I had said to her, I really love these paintings, but like, that's not my desert. Like, I don't feel attached to Joshua Tree. I did live for a time in this other desert with different plants. So like, if I send you some photos, can you just like do, and she was like, I can't, like, no, that's not my process. I won't do it. Like those paintings you saw in Joshua Tree, like, I was sitting in Joshua Tree. I was quickly like, I guess I'll think of something else. But she was like, actually, I'm quitting my job. I just quit my job yesterday, and I have all this money saved up, and I was going to do a road trip, because she was born and raised in New York. And she's like, I really haven't been around the country. And she was like, so do you think I should go to Tucson? And I was like, yeah, you should. She did it, and then she sent me a bunch of paintings from Tucson, and that one I was like, yes, like this is the cover. Is this like this highway? And she was like, no, that's actually from like the drive to Tucson. Like I think she was in like Texas, or she wasn't quite there yet. And she had her friend take the wheel, and then she just painted that from the passenger seat as the car was moving, like actually like in motion on the highway.
Wow.
And so then I was like, all right, well, that can't be the cover, because that's not like my road that I thought it was. And I think my wife eventually was just like, who gives a shit? Like, of all the paintings she sent, she was like, this is so clearly like the record cover. Like, stop being so rigid about like the concept. And I was like, yeah, you're right, this is the record cover. So
That's cool though, because it kind of looks like almost like a photograph with like shit like motion blur. But I never would have actually guessed that it was painted unless I looked like at, I guess whenever the vinyl record arrives, maybe it'll be a lot more apparent. But.
Okay, I have one in here. I was gonna send it. I had it to send to Bob from Pavement, who did the lettering.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a little glary, I guess, but
yeah. Outside of the wrap,
it's all glare.
All right, well, let's
Sweet.
move on
Okay, well,
to
let's
Tonic.
Move on, yeah.
Tonic, that was I mean, again, it's a little more literal than some of the others, but the like background synthesizer patch that's like guiding that like kind of made the chord progression that eventually I wrote on top of. It's similar to Shaw Deal, where I had a field recording of like Hare Krishna group in the Delancey Street subway station in New York, which was so Tonic was this club in New York, and it's the first place I saw a hurdy-gurdy. KG Hino did like 3 nights of do you know who that is?
I believe you've mentioned him before.
He's the Japanese guitar player. He's been around since the 1970s in a bunch of projects and like pretty legendary in like that Japanese kind of noisy psych rock scene. But Tonic was like connected to the Knitting Factory world of New York, and John Zorn opened it in '98, like a year after I moved there. And my college radio station was really like our new music department did not play indie rock. We played like free jazz and 20th century classical and avant-garde and noise music. So we were like the main radio station in New York, us and like WFMU that would have done promotion for that club. And I jumped at the chance often to do it. So for every show you could, like if I mentioned the gig on my radio show and I said like, oh, if you call in, like I can, I have 2 free tickets or whatever. And then if somebody called in, I would write down their name. Then I would call Tonic and be like, hey, here's the people that wanted the free spots. If I did that, sometimes they would let me come in as well. They'd be like, yeah, we'll throw you on too. Or if nobody did it, I pretended like Dave called and I gave them Dave's name. And then I was Dave's +1. So we went to a lot of free shows at Tonic and like learned a lot, really like opened our minds and was a big part of our musical education. I was still only 19 when I started doing this. So yeah, the subway stop that I got out of, I think it was the Delancey Street stop on the F train. And later on in life, I just happened to be in there. I think it was after Tonic closed even, but I had a recorder and I recorded this Hare Krishna band, and I've never been able to find a place to use it, but I decided to put it in my modular the same way I did with Shaw Deal stuff. And I just froze on like a split second of it. You can almost hear it like looping a little bit. And I just then changed the pitches of that frozen thing to make so it's like what sounds like a synthesizer pad is really just like that's a field recording on a subway station by where this club used to be. So yeah, I did radio promotion for this 3-night residency that KG Hino did over Halloween weekend in 1998. And the first night was when he played the hurdy-gurdy. And he has like a much bigger instrument. He's very atonal, but it was like the coolest, most haunting thing I ever saw. Dave was there too. Dave was the one that figured out because we were in the back, and he like got close enough to be, because we were like, what the fuck is making that sound? And he like kind of spied it and was like, oh, that's a hurdy-gurdy. Or I think that's a hurdy-gurdy. And then also like even just the hurdy-gurdy like riff that I play in that song, that it sounds kind of like a guitar riff or something, like sounds kind of Sonic Youthy to me, like, so like, and Tonic was on the Lower East Side of New York. So it's sort of my, I think of this record as like a synthesis between my time in Arizona and my time in New York. And so it was like, I put those 2 songs together, like live to me, they're almost like one track. They kind of lead into it. It's a very like nostalgic record for me. Like a lot of things reference music I that was formative for me and times that were formative for me. It's like also why I named the record what I did, like kind of looking back to times when like cigarettes and music were so like linked to me, So yeah, that's why it's called Tonic.
It's an amazing song. And also like, I'm curious to know how you landed on the decision to make that the lead single.
I always let the record labels pick singles. I don't like thinking about that. Even when I disagree, sometimes I'm just like, you guys know best. But that one made sense to me. There's a podcast called You Don't Know Mojack. It's like these 2 Canadian friends that they're a little bit older than me, but not much. They go through the SST Records catalog. SST, it's like Greg Ginn's record label. He started Black Flag.
Right.
And,
Black Flag, yeah.
So they go through the whole catalog. They're still doing it almost a decade later, where the podcast, like the episode number, corresponds to the SST catalog number. And it started out with just the 2 of them. It'd be like 10 minutes. And now it grew into a thing where like now they can usually get like somebody from the band on the podcast, and like they're like these 2-hour episodes. Animal Collective sound guy is about 10 years older than us. So he came up in 80s hardcore, and that's like really important to him. And, like their SST records are really important to me, like Sonic Youth or Husker Du, Dinosaur Jr., things like that. But I like discovered a lot of them like later, But anyway, he would listen to this podcast on tour and tell me about certain bands. And he was like, did you know that like this person had a record on And so SST is like a crazy label once you get beyond the classics. It's like there's all this New York downtown stuff like Elliott Sharp, and there are these like Richmond hippie bands like Always August and Alternatives, who Jim Thompson from my band Motherfuckers, JMB, he was in Alternatives. So there were these like, it was like around the time I got out, Dave was like, hey, you should come on tour with me again. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll do a hurdy-gurdy set. And I started to make a drone set, and I was that almost like ripped off directly like KG Haino or Tony Conrad or these kind of string-based drone artists I like. And I was like super bummed. I was almost gonna like tell Dave I couldn't go on the tour because I was hating everything I did, and I didn't really think like you all would just want to see somebody like drone on a hurdy-gurdy for a half an hour before Dave played. And there was this episode, I think it was for this Black Flag record called Process of Weeding Out, which is an instrumental Black Flag record. Like Henry Rollins isn't on it. And honestly, like the vocals in Black Flag are kind of like my least favorite thing anyway. So, but I like it instrumentally. And I'm not, and for that reason, I'm not that big of a Black Flag fan, but I had never heard this record. And so the podcast was talking about that. And I think they made a comment about how like, this was when the band wasn't getting along, and Greg Ginn had this insane practice schedule where he ran everyone into the ground. And if he really like could have had his way, he would have just made Black Flag like him playing guitar, soloing over a drum machine. And I was like, well, that sounds fun. So like I made like a drum patch on my modular, and I just plugged the hurdy-gurdy into a distortion pedal, and I took the drone strings off. So it was just like one string. And I just like noodled as if I was a guitar player. And I suck at guitar. I can't play, like I can play chords, but I can't do anything else on it. But I always wanted to. Like I always wanted to be Stephen Malcolmus or Thurston Moore or Michael Caroli from Can and Syd Barrett. Like, and it was the first time I was like, oh, I kind of like feel like I'm playing solos or these like riffs like the guitar players I always wished I could be when I was a teenager. And so that was really like the genesis of the whole record. Like that was the first day I wrote Sonora, which is the last track on the record. That day, that's basically, that is me just like trying out that idea to see if it was worth pursuing. And yeah, that's how the whole set came to be. So I wanted like something else to also reference like SST records and distorted guitar. And since SST like again had that like Sonic Youth were on SST, but they also had these like New York avant-garde people or like avant-garde guitar players like Henry Kaiser and stuff like that. I was looking for a title that would connect to that as well.
That's actually really interesting that you kind of went down that rabbit hole, because I feel like there is some degree of like a punk ethos to this record. Definitely like more so than I think any of the other music that we've heard from you or from the collective. And
yeah,
I guess that
makes me happy to hear. I mean, that was the other reason why I thought it was worth pursuing. Like one reason I've never wanted to do a solo record was because I was like, I don't just want to do like what I do in Animal Collective minus the other guys. Like it just never, I couldn't like conceive of what that would sound like. The closest thing would almost be like a Tangerine Reef or something like that. But I still feel like when like Dave and Josh like play like more like kind of traditionally like or melodically focused things on those records, that like is what brings it to life. And I just could never imagine like what it would sound like without them, you know. It's not like the craziest thing to say it's part of the Animal Collective universe, but I don't think it really like sounds like anything in the Animal Collective universe. So I felt like I could add something new to the conversation, even though the other guys have done like rock stuff. And you know, even Dave, I feel like some of his stuff, you're like there's stuff on Slasher Flicks or even in Animal Collective where you're like, that's Dave that likes punk, you know. I didn't just want to make an ambient record. Like I tried, I wasn't feeling it. Or I tried to make an ambient set and I was bored and sad. But.
Well, it's interesting too, because like I feel like some of the direction of the music is not too far separated from the stuff that you were doing with the Motherfuckers. So it's like,
Motherfuckers came after though. Like they saw me do this and then they were like, can we do that like with Motherfuckers, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. That was going to be my question actually, is which one came first there. But
I mean, not in the way of like, they had this idea of like, I would just play like a hurdy-gurdy drone and not really like do anything like notey. And then they would like do the grooves. But then Mark saw me do this. And it was after I played Sonora, which was the last song. And he was like, can we like play that song in our set? This was before Motherfuckers had ever played. And we were just supposed to do a one-off gig. And I was like, yeah, we can play it as long as you're fine playing one note. And that he wasn't, you know, fine playing one note. So we never ended up playing it. But like in trying to play that song, we sort of arrived at like what became the Motherfuckers sound, you know, anyway.
All right, so let's continue down the track list here. So
RV Envy.
RV Envy. Yeah, I was like, did I get that wrong? RV Envy. So, can you tell us a little bit about the origin of that track name and I guess the song itself?
I mean, all these things like don't start always with a concept. They start with me just like playing with sounds, and then they become something. And then I try and find like a title that has a double meaning or something if possible. But this is the only thing on the record that's like a sample I didn't play, which are like those voices in the song. I took from like a video I had of like a robot like expo or something. Like it's literally just like mouths, like robot mouths. And they're from a long time ago where they're trying to show like how like with a robot mouth you can make vowel sounds, you know. It was just like this demonstration video at this conference or something, and I think they sound really cool and they're really funny videos to watch because the people like kind of make these like latex mouths, but you can see all the mechanics, but it's not like a face, just like a mouth.
I think I've seen those before. It's kind of like it almost like resembles Mongolian throat singing in a way, but like
Kinda,
in a more synthetic fashion.
Yeah.
Plus, RV Envy is just fun to say out loud.
Yeah, totally.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
I remember like thinking when I was watching the video, like I wonder if like there's a sense of like what is this world, you know? Like because one time I asked a friend of mine who does does field recordings for like audiobooks, and I mentioned how I had read a book by some guy who like I in the bio it said he did that too, and he was like, oh yeah, that guy's such an asshole. And I was like, oh, there's this like weird competitive jealousy thing in the world of like audiobook Foley recorders, you know. And I just thought like, I wonder if that exists at these demonstrations, like, oh, your robot like makes that noise better than mine. And so it's like robot voice envy, but the title, the other meaning was like, when I think about the genesis of why I ever did any solo stuff, you know, again, I always like give credit to Dave. He was the one that was like, even started with like New Psychoactives, like the first split New Psychoactives. There's this drone thing called tonalism in California. They don't do it every year. Dave and I did it a few years, like in 2015, but I did a DJ set at it in 2009 when we were on the Merriweather tour, because it was after we played in Big Sur, and the next night was going to be this all night drone thing, and we had a night off. And they asked me like, would you stick around and DJ? So I did. And I remember Dave being like, you're not just going to do a solo set? Like, you know, starting then, he's been bothering me. Like, I don't get like why you don't just do this, you know, especially because I used to make my own stuff in college, just like noisy stuff. And so he's always been the one that like kind of bothered me into doing it. But the reason I started, like when I would do it usually like starting in 2017 when I would do it, we only did a couple shows together, but we were going to do a whole tour together. And it was like, I just kind of wanted to like get back out on the road with him, you know, because like we've been doing road trips together since we were teenagers, and I just like being on the road, you know. Like the other reason I made this record kind of like punkish-ish sounding is because like that's sort of like that's like home for me, and you know, like dive bars, and I don't always like playing in a dive bar depending on the music, but like I just feel at home at like small shows and like seeing bands and the room being a little sweaty. It used to be smoky. It's just like it feels like a second home to me, and like I like being on tour. I'm not one of those musicians that like complains about being on tour. Like there are negative things about it, but so I don't know. I always like kind of when I'm on the road, even on like my family vacations, you know, like sort of like look at somebody in their RV, and I definitely am like envious of the life. I'm just like, there's a side of being a nomad that like really ironically feels like home to me. So since like the genesis of me even trying to do anything solo was like, I just want to be on the road. And when like Animal Collective is not touring and my bandmates are doing solo stuff and they're on the road, I'm like, I miss being on the road, you know? So that's like the other side of that title.
Yeah, it's a great track too. Like my first note was that it's a sonic tornado that I want to be swept away in.
Oh, sweet. Thank you.
No.
Both those tracks have Aliana Kalava playing drums, and she did a great job. Really.
Honestly, the drumming on this record, like all the different drummers are adding such an amazing element to
totally
each one of their features. Like it's actually crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't find just one drummer to play throughout. You know, like when I told Adam like I have 3 different like identities, he was like, I have the 3 people. You know,
That's awesome. Okay, how about not trad?
Can I guess, actually?
sure.
My theory was that this one is like the most sort of like Eastern music, like world music kind of sounding. And it's like maybe your brain would think like it's traditional music, but you're like stressing, no, it's not traditional.
Well, kind of.
That's the best
Yeah,
I could come up with.
It is the closest to me of like traditional hurdy-gurdy music. One element of the hurdy-gurdy that I can do in a very basic way, it's like the buzzing string. And it just doesn't make sense in Animal Collective or in my solo stuff to me. Like whenever I hear that noise, I'm like, that doesn't fit. But I almost did it on that track and it would have made it even more traditional, like just kind of hurdy-gurdy music. And it references definitely like things like the 30-year band that I mentioned earlier. Also, there's a great band called Amps for Christ, which Animal Collective is a big fan of. We've played shows with them in the 2000s. They were a big influence on this record for me. And they do traditional songs as well, but like with kind of trashy, distorted electronics and stuff, like traditional folk songs. So like I was in my brain, I was like, this does lean in that trad way. And what I did on the hurdy-gurdy almost sounds like when I do practice out of my like, when I practice out of like my workbook, you know? But the not trad is actually like, that phrase is an inside joke in Animal Collective to say something's not trad. And I'll leave the joke on the inside. It's not dirty or anything, but it's, I don't know. Our jokes
You had
are
to
our
be there.
jokes.
Yeah.
But I named it that specifically so that when the other 3 guys saw that title, they would chuckle.
Well, it is a good track, and like Greg said, I did feel like almost like I was about to start doing a jig or something because
Yeah.
it's like I'm getting that kind of vibe from it. But it's funny because it's like even though it does kind of go in a little bit of a different direction musically than the stuff you hear before that, it's all still in the same sort of like wheelhouse. And I guess we can kind of talk a bit about that too. It's like, was sequencing this album at all tricky to try and find that flow?
Well, I sequenced it live first, and it was not tricky. I actually like, you know, this is the same order I play it in when I play it live, except I don't play Government Job and I play a song from Shaw Deal. It kind of came together like pretty well, but because I knew like Dave was like, can you write a set that's like around 40 minutes to open for me? I kind of had the goalposts, you know. I recorded around 70 minutes of this music, like for Camel Lights. Like a lot of these are edits from like long improvisations in some cases, like Color in the Black and White or Compact Mirror, Last Names. All those those went on for a long time. You know, I had to cut like 20 plus minutes of jamming to even make it as short as it is, but or as long as it is. But anyway, I knew what the goalpost was in terms of like it should be around this long. And in my head, I knew like how I wanted the set to move energy wise once I had 2 or 3 tracks done. And again, I started to think about like the idea of like the 3 cigarette kind of format, like, all right, what's going to go in the middle? What's going to start? What's going to go? Like if I was like in the crowd watching like the show, like where would I smoke? And be like, yeah, yes, this one, and like light a cigarette. And so like I had like the beginning, middle, and end, and then I just thought about like where I wanted the energy to go for the other parts, and intentionally made tracks that had that kind of energy that would be like where I thought the energy of the set should be at that moment. So like the sequence came in the like I almost composed it as like one piece from the very beginning, you know.
Yeah, well, it sounds so cohesive that makes perfect sense.
Well, it's also like there's like a bit of a subconscious element to it where if you're not familiar with like where the track separators are, sometimes you'll be like, oh, it's been like 3 songs and I didn't even realize that it's been that long since I looked back. Like, is this still not track? Oh no, we're already on track 6. So
really,
yeah,
nice.
It does definitely flow very well.
It bled way more than it does. And since I was in Asheville, by the end of like making even though I only spent like I went back to Asheville for like a few days at a time, 3 times, but I think like it was all made from like having nothing tracked to like it's mixed in like 12 days. I think I spent making it. By the end of it though, I was like, the hurdy-gurdy can be a harsh texture to listen to a lot, and I was like, I can't even tell this is like pleasing to listen to or like a fun record to listen to. And Adam kept telling me it was, but like I didn't really. I was like, you've been in this too deep. So Dave heard like a little bit of it when he came in to play bass, but even for like Compact Mirror, he couldn't like remember the chord changes aren't like they don't make sense. There's like a randomness to like when I choose a chord or when the modular chose what sample of me playing to play. And so he couldn't really, he was like, it doesn't like I don't know what's coming. So how am I supposed to change? So like even for that, he didn't listen to it a ton. He kind of just like played, and then he'd be like, "I'm gonna guess what's coming next," and then he would play. And if it didn't work, he would just play. And then if we had to go back and be like, we had to like literally cut up all his phrases and like match it with the chord that it's supposed, like that the modular spit out, because there was no way he could guess right. But so he hadn't really heard it. So I asked him to come in, and I was like, "You just like listen to me and tell me if like this is like too brutal to listen to," and I just left him alone with it and his like, he had a few comments, but his main comment, he was like, I don't know if it was the main one, but he was like, I feel like I could use like a breath, like cause I literally had it never stopped. It was just like everything crossfaded. And he was like, I feel like you don't need to, like, it's not your live set. Like you can stop a song and like, wait a second and then start the next one. I was like, yeah, maybe that is what it is. It's just like, it's too like, just giving somebody 2 seconds, here and there, like will help it not be so exhausting or something, but I'm glad that it still feels continuous. Like that was definitely my intent. I want it to feel continuous, but not exhausting and not, taxing to listen to.
Oh yeah, it definitely strikes that balance. So I want to talk a bit about color in black and white. So it's funny because I kind of came to my own conclusions while I was listening to this record about like where these song titles could come from, sort of linking that to what the sort of sonic atmosphere sort of gave me the visuals for. And now that I know that it's a bit more about your own personal journey through your own memory lane, I wonder if you were ever like a crime detective in like a noir film, because that's kind of the vibe I got from this. I saw like a crime noir film because it's got that jazzy, like you're in some seedy bar.
Wow.
Everything's black and white. Maybe it's smoky. Maybe there's Camel lights being smoked. And there's a mystery, maybe a murder mystery. That's kind of the vibe I got from it.
I mean, it's supposed to be like late night, but I don't know if I thought more about childhood where I was not in bars, but
so I was completely.
I am aware of like the jazziness of it, like that was definitely the one where I was like, I knew I was going to ask Shane to play clarinet on it, but I knew I wanted like a drummer to just improvise, like a really good, like improvisational free jazz, or free drummer to play on top of it. The vibes though were one of those things where I was like, I feel like I can hear vibes, but I don't know what to like. But then I played it since that Adam Lyon came to pick up his thing, and I was like, here's like, do you think you could play on this? And he was like, yeah, totally. And that definitely puts it in the world you're talking about. But I thought about like watching television as a kid, like late night, like old black and white horror movies, or even just like reruns of like stuff from the 50s. And I've talked about this before with friends, like Dave and I used to talk about it, especially when we'd be like on drugs or something as kids. Like when you watch something like on those old tube televisions, which like the television in my basement when I was growing up was like a really old tube TV that like my grandparents had given my parents. Not like a rabbit ears kind of a thing, but it still was like the buttons. It had like 12 buttons that you like pushed, like to choose and like a kind of dial. We used to like talk when we were kids, like teenagers, but like it would like one thing we kind of bonded over of being like isn't it cool when like you watch black and white stuff on like those kind of TVs, you can almost see the like color guns behind it, and it almost seems like there is color like in the black and white, like that's where that phrase comes from, like there's color in the black and white. But there's a hurdy-gurdy like backing track, like a loop of me playing hurdy-gurdy in the background that the modular kind of randomizes, and then there's the drum beat I made. Live I play hurdy-gurdy, but like I decided to like, there are a few tracks on here where I asked people to play to me, and then I took myself out. And I can't remember if I ever even on this one, I like played my live part on it. I think what I basically like with Shane on the clarinet and Adam on the vibes, I was like, I play stuff like this on the hurdy-gurdy, but I don't want, like, we need a break from the hurdy-gurdy at this point in the record. Like, this is the scale I mess around in. Can you just mess around in that scale, like on your instrument? And so like the idea of like like it's also not a coincidence my initials are B and W. You know what I mean? So it's like
Right.
trying to make me more interesting. I guess like putting some color into like my bare bones thing. But I don't know, just like that phrase that like, you know, again, like Dave and I have been saying, so like when you can see color in the black and white, again, like there's some corny, like I said, self-help stuff to like a lot of my projects. Like Shaw Deal was kind of all about that. And this is, you know, sort of it too. It's like this is just part of a process of like being braver, you know, even like to be like brave enough for me to like ask to bring in musicians that are like far more talented than me and far more like instinctual than me, and just be like, and have the confidence to be like, I like that, or I don't like that, or, you know, like make sure it expresses like my kind of point of view, but also without telling them exactly what to do. I thought that phrase encapsulated it, you know?
Well, kind of continuing on
Absolutely.
that thread, when it comes to the second half of Compact Mirror Last Names, the last names section, was I believe that there is a bonus track
Yeah.
that has a percussion on this one. Was that just like a sort of decision where you felt like it worked better without the drums, but you still
I
like?
couldn't actually decide, and I asked for opinions, and I got conflicting opinions. I play it live without the drums. Like I play that song live, and I always do it without the drums. And since I couldn't really decide, I decided to like default to what I do live and be like, all right, I'm gonna like maybe honor the way I've always done it. Maybe that's the right way, even though I can't really tell because but I really love the drumming on it, so I couldn't let go of that idea either. And since there was this empty side on the vinyl, I asked Drag City, I mixed and I mastered this version of it with drums. Like, can I use this somehow? So this is me being indecisive, you know.
Well, we don't need to go into detail on where government job came from, I don't think. If people are familiar enough with the Brian Waite's Geologist lore, it was the subcommittee for the Kerry campaign.
No,
So,
I mean, yeah, no, that's like conflating two things. But it was a subcommittee for in the Senate for oceans, fisheries, and Coast Guard. But the ranking Democrat on that at the time was John Kerry, who was running for
gotcha.
president.
Okay.
So like you can't really do the same work in the committee and like the campaign. But I did some like stuff for the campaign. I did, but because he was running for president, the committee had like less work to do than normal. This was during the time we wrote that record Feels, so I was able to like tour a lot, and that was like my fork in the road, basically.
And did you smoke a lot of cigarettes when you were doing all the driving back and forth?
I did, but I also smoked a lot of cigarettes like on the job, because it was like my way of like when you work on Capitol Hill, like after work is almost like as big a part of it's supposed to be as big a part of your experience as like during work. You know, you got to network to get work kind of bullshit. And like I actually really liked sitting in my office and like nerding out over like climate change policy, and I fucking hated when I had to go to a bar or a happy hour that was sponsored by some lobbyist afterward with a business card and like exchange business cards with people over like miniature spring rolls or whatever. And I just like I hate it. I like hated that part of the job, and it kind of made me realize like I'll probably never be successful in the world of DC policy. The fact that I was a smoker was like so helpful because a lot of people were not smokers, and you couldn't smoke in any of these hotel ballrooms or wherever these things would happen. Every 10 minutes, I'd just be like in some awkward conversation, I'd be like, well, I'm gonna go outside and smoke a cigarette. Really saved me.
That's the one thing I really miss about cigarettes is like it's just a great exit from like
Totally.
anything that you're doing.
Yeah.
You're just like,
Ugh.
I just, sometimes you just need a break from just taking a break even. Like
Yeah.
times I remember when I would smoke cigarettes, I'm like, I just need a change of location. So I'm just going to walk outside and have a cigarette.
Totally.
But you've seen those truth ads, right, on TV where like that exact scenario is framed as like a negative. They're like, you're killing your social life if you can't even sit and watch a movie if you need to go out and smoke every 10 minutes. I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like there are a million other ways you can try and convince kids to not smoke that don't need to be that petty.
Wow. That was a selling point for me for sure.
I don't think we talked about the title for Compact Mirror and where that kind of comes from.
There's like two sides to it. The first side, I feel like I can tell this story. I haven't decided if I want to keep this private, but it's not that. Like, there was the musician David Berman who played in that. He had a project called Silver Jews. It was really important to us.
Mhm.
I knew him a little bit. He died from suicide shortly before, like around the time I got the hurdy-gurdy. And, he was on Drag City. He lived at the Drag City, like, building. And I went to, that was the first cigarette I smoked after I hadn't smoked in like 11 years was, Josh and I were DJing like in the Midwest somewhere, and the hurdy-gurdy arrived broken. And the guy who had been like giving me advice on hurdy-gurdy lived in Guelph, Ontario. And so like Josh and I had to drive to this like pretty like well-paying like DJ gig out in Ohio. And then I was like, there was this exhibition of paintings that were inspired by Silver Jews lyrics at the Drag City building. They have an art gallery in their building. And I hadn't seen any of them or anybody, like any artists like that I knew in Chicago that were part of like the group of people that were friends with David since he died. It was only a couple months later. So I went out to spend time with them. And when I was there, somebody was like, do you want to, like, David's room is almost like an art exhibit in itself. And they were like, do you want to go see his room? And he had a pack of Camel lights in there. And it was like an emotional thing. But like when I opened they let me like just sit in his room for a while. But like when I opened the pack just to be like, I just want to like smell a Camel light again, like unsmoked, like I just want to smell it, And I made a comment like, I kind of want to bum one of these. And they were like, you can take it. Like, so I got to smoke one from like the pack he left in his room. I smoked it with my wife on New Year's, and we were like, she hadn't quit like smoked in forever too. And we were like, this rules. So one of my favorite lyrics of his, it's on the record, American Water, and it's the last track, Wild Kindness. The lyric is, every leaf in a compact mirror hits a target that we can't see. I think that's it. That's the way I've always heard it. I'm not like a lyrics guy enough to always look them up, even when I love the lyrics. I don't know if like that lyric, I don't know why it's always like stuck out to me. It's just been like, I mean, he was like the best lyricist ever, but there was just something about it that was like, it was a really healthy way, I thought, to like smoke a cigarette. And like I said, other than that one Marlboro Light, like the older you get, I've been friends with the same people, been with the same woman for a long time. Like, everybody has a past. You have these unhealthy things from your past. And the older you get, when you like try and like reckon with some of those moments, it's like, you look back at like something in your past where you're like, that was unhealthy. That was an unhealthy time. That was an unhealthy behavior. But like, is there a way to like re-engage with it in a healthy way? And I felt like I started thinking about that with that cigarette in particular. And as we've talked about, there is like a lot of stuff on this record that's like kind of referential. You could be like, that sounds like Sonic Youth, or that sounds like Can, or that sounds like Krautrock, or whatever. That for this track, it sounds like it could be on compact records, like minimal techno, ambient techno kind of a thing. If you in Animal Collective, like, I can't remember if I've said this before, but I know I talked about this with the Motherfuckers record with some people, like, because that record's like that too a little bit. If in the four of us, one of like, that's the meanest thing you can say in Animal Collective is like, it sounds like this, like it sounds like your influences. It sounds like you're being referential. It's like, that's the meanest thing you can say to us, like in the context of Animal Collective. It's the thing that will like make us be like, fucking like, now we got to throw everything out, But I was wondering, in making this record, like, is there a healthy way to like engage with like embracing your influences? That's the main reason I chose that title. I will also say, I have certain friends that like seem to like my solo music, and literally the only comment they ever give me is, I like the compacty one, because like I always have something that sounds like that's a big influence on us, and like, especially with modular, like, you put something through like a reverse pedal and it has like a minimal beat. It's good. Someone from like our age and our time is going to say, that sounds like Compact Records, or, and our like name an artist that was on Compact Records. So I have a few friends that like, they're like, yeah, man, your stuff is sweet. But literally the only comment they've really ever said to me is like, I like the compacty one. And I knew that this would be the one that they would say it about. And, like, but like when it was just like a live set before, like I told anybody what the title was going to be. I was like, this is going to be the one that they're going to be like, I like that one because it sounds compacty. And so like compact mirror, like waiting to see if they get it.
Nice. That's honestly, that's such an amazing story that you shared though with David. I mean, it adds so much more weight to that track too, because Greg and I were talking about how it's like the centerpiece of the album as well. It's got a really, massive run time, but it goes through these sort of almost like it's like a story arc. There's like 3 sort of acts to it. And the fact that you got to sort of posthumously share that cigarette with David is just like adds so much to it. I think it's a really, really beautiful thing that you shared. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Shared a lot of, not a ton, but shared a lot of cool memories and stories with that guy. He's one of a kind for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Moving on, we have
Pumpkin Festival.
Right. Yes. So this one is great because as Animal Collective fans, we always love to hear the word pumpkin when it shows up. Is there any any sort of connecting tissues to the pumpkin saga that has been running through the?
No, I actually didn't think about that. No, this was another one that I wrote where like again the point was I wanted to write something like a little bit closer. Like I do love traditional hurdy-gurdy music. And I do love traditional music in that way and like folk music. I was thinking about bands like Amps for Christ that do it in more of like a sonic way or 30-year band again. So this was like in that world and kind of fairy tale world, like, and it just sounded like folk horror, burning Wicker Man or something. I was like, this is like the maypole dance kind of like like I wanted to write something like that would be really like cyclical and repetitive. And I was when I was always thinking about Tucson and my time in Arizona, there was the town that was the closest to the biosphere, which was like the research center where I lived at, was called Oracle. So it was called Oracle, Arizona. And every year there's a pumpkin festival because like there's like you can grow it's like they call it like Fiesta de la Calabazas. I think that's the Spanish. Like people grow like lots of like different gourds out in this. It's like in the high desert, like in the foothills of the mountains, and people grow these gourds. And there's like the harvest festival that comes every October. And originally I was like going to call the whole record like Harvest Festival, like the very, very initial idea I had because like I wanted to reference that SST connection, the punk thing. And I was like, well, I need like some kind of a word that has an S and a T next to it. And then I'll just like draw a second S or something. And the word festival came out. Harvest, I thought about. So anyway, this festival that they had, there was one year where like the nurse at the Biosphere, she was just like, in case anybody got hurt in there or something, she put out like on the community board or whatever. It was like for the festival, her husband was going to run a barbecue smoker, and it was going to be like smoking from the day before. And then like all this, and he needed an assistant. And I'm a vegetarian now, but I liked barbecue back then a lot. So, and it was like, he was going to use like mesquite wood that like was just like from local mesquite trees that had, dropped their branches and stuff. So it was like locally harvested mesquite wood. And so I volunteered, and I just spent the whole day at this like pumpkin harvest festival. Like, I think he didn't trust me I was not allowed to run the smoker because I've never run a smoker to this day. So I didn't really know how to like manage the temperature, but like I would like move wood around and shit. But I mainly was like just like the server. Like people would be like, I want a piece of like a barbecue thing or whatever. But it was a really great day. I remember like loving it, just like drinking beer. I ate a ton of barbecue myself. And like I felt we were so secluded at the Biosphere, and like I was part of like a little bit of a scene in Tucson, not much really, but like I would just go to this gallery called Solar Culture there. I set up like a Wolf Eye show there, but like that was like the extent of my connection to the community. And then the community of Oracle was like, we knew some of those like classic biospherians. Like, I don't know if you've seen that Spaceship Earth documentary about the biosphere. It's really cool. Watch.
Yeah.
A lot of those people were still around. And we got to know them a little bit. But
that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, they were, I never became like close tight with any of them, but then there was this whole other community of Oracle that like, it just felt weird that like we were at this thing like 3 miles into the hills. And so it was just like a really nice day to feel like I was part of that community. And again, being like a harvest festival, autumn harvest festival, that like that track to me, like I wanted to make like an autumn harvest festival kind of a track. That's where the name Pumpkin Festival came from. I felt stupid naming it like the Spanish name. I just, and I didn't want to, despite being married to a Spanish teacher, I don't speak it well. I didn't want to like say the phrase over and over again if I had to do any preps. So,
Well, Spaceship Earth is interesting because I found it entertaining because they're like the most benevolent cult that ever existed. Like they were just there for science. They weren't there for any other purpose, but it went the way it did. But yeah, like you said, it's a really fascinating watch just to see like how large scale that project was. And I believe it's still out there. I don't know if it.
Oh yeah, it's still out there. They still do climate change research at it.
They just let in oxygen. That's
they have to,
the main difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Shelley Duvall. What's your favorite Shelley Duvall movie?
The Shining.
Okay, well, that must have been the most obvious question and answer in history, I guess. But
and I go with Three Women.
Okay, and then Popeye.
Actually, not a big Popeye fan. Robert Altman can be like, I mean, I know I just said Three Women, but like he can be hit or miss for me.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt when I went and watched MASH, when he was like starting that style where he's like, he hasn't really nailed it down yet. You can kind of catch what people are saying, but like it's really like the slapstick stuff is the stuff that resonates the most from that one.
I didn't know what I was going to call this one. For a while, I was just going to call this one Color in the Black and White Part 2, but I love Shelley Duvall. Even before I saw The Shining, she used to host this show in the 80s called Fairy Tale Theater that I used to watch on TV. That was like my introduction to her. And then when I saw The Shining, I'd be like, oh, crazy. That's like the... yeah, I think she's really beautiful. I've always just been like her acting. I love Shelley Duvall. But this was another track where like I play it live and I laid it down in the studio how I play it live, but then I had like Mikey and Adam Lyon. I think those are the only two other people that play on this track. I had them play basically to like what I play live, but then I took myself out a lot of what I do out live, and then I played on top of them. So like, and I find that a valuable thing to do sometimes, or at least I did for this record. Like, I'm a big fan of John Cage and like how like the processes that he would use to try and like remove ego from composition. I know a lot of people like find that stuff like kind of dry or academic, whatever. I find it really emotional, like the motivations behind a lot of his techniques, and like pretty spiritual as well. And so when I have ideas like that, where I'm like, I want to almost like remove myself from it and let what other people did on top like make a new thing. I mean, it's not like as egoless as Cage, but I was thinking about the idea of like disappearing yourself, or like you can hear a little bit of what I do in the background, so you're almost like a mirage, and I was thinking about mirages and people that disappear. And Shelley Duvall like kind of famously like left Hollywood and moved to a town in Texas, and nobody really like knew where she was for a while, but she almost like was this mirage where like people would see this person, like in the desert of Texas and be like, is that like who I think it is? And then, if you're a fan of Incredible String Band, like Licorice, who was one of the women in Incredible String Band, she hasn't been seen in 40 or 50 years. And the last place she was seen was hitchhiking in Arizona, So like, I used to think when I lived in Arizona, like, oh, that'd be cool. Like if I picked up Licorice as a hitchhiker, but would I even recognize her? Or would it just be like, I think I saw her, but maybe it was just a mirage? So I was thinking about the idea of these women in the desert that means something to me, all being mirages, I have a few ex-girlfriends from my time in Arizona. It's like, do I even remember them accurately? Or like my memories of those relationships, like mirages. And so then like, since I chose to make myself almost a mirage, like in the mix of the song, I just decided to pick one of the ladies I was thinking about that's like a desert mirage to me. And Shelley Duvall made the most sense. Kind of the one everybody would know. Like if I said Licorice and you just think I was talking about Licorice, I wouldn't want to name any other people like by name. And Shelley Duvall's like, I mean, she's the coolest, Like the fact that she did that, and I know she did like start to resurface and like get like kind of like a hipster social media following like right before she died again. But yeah, it's pretty cool move she pulled.
Totally. Yeah. And it's funny that you bring up the fairy tales because I literally just got Rumpelstiltskin that was part of that fairy tale
That's
series.
My favorite one. Yeah.
It's so good. And I found it at a thrift store for $1.99.
Nice. Yeah,
It's good stuff.
everyone. I projected a lot of those. Drop of Sun has a projector in the control room, so depending on what song I was working on, I would pick different videos. And for Not Trad and Pumpkin Festival and Shelley Duvall, I always had like a rotating loop of like a YouTube playlist of fairy tale theater.
All right. Well, the last one is
All right.
Sonora. So I'm
Final check,
assuming, again, I don't want to explain the titles for you, but I'm assuming it's a reference to the desert, and it's kind of like a nice way to bookend both the beginning and end of the album with direct references to that area that all these sort of sounds kind of conjured up the memories of.
Yeah, I've always liked Sonoran Desert. Incredibly important to me. I really found like a big part of myself out there and made a lot of lifelong friends and connected me to so many things. And I've always just loved that word. Sounds like it's related to audio and music, and always knew I was going to use it somehow. The first place I used it was I named, when COVID happened, my kid's school had a tarantula and it needed like somebody to take care of it. And I was like, totally. Because there were tarantulas all over the desert. Like when the monsoons come in the Sonoran Desert, the tarantulas come out to mate. And I have like some photos of it. I think Drag City was even going to use a photo of me from back then. They would come into our house and shit, but they were like not threatening at all. Like I would pick them up a lot and like just bring them back outside. And sometimes they would like sprint like up, like you would end up with like one on your head before you knew it, if you weren't careful. And so I like tarantulas. I would totally like have many of them. I learned when I took care of the school's tarantula, my kids and I took care of it during COVID. You're really not a spider owner. You're like a cricket manager. And they're like, they smell so bad. They die before you even get a chance to feed them to the spider. It's not as fun as you think, but I got really into spiders. If you... No, I'm sorry. So to play hurdy-gurdy, there's like cotton that you have to spin like around the strings where it touches the wheel. And that's like one of the hardest things to hurdy-gurdy is like not like the most difficult thing to play, at least like in the way that I play it's pretty easy, but you have to learn the maintenance of it and like the mechanics of how to make it make sound. So like that's a big part of it, is how to like spin cotton. So before I even got one, when we were working on time skips, the house that we rented was like infested with brown recluse spiders. And I got bit once, like it was like in my pants.
Oh, Jesus.
Whole like rest of the songwriting session. Nothing bad happened to me, but beyond just like itching like crazy. And then like that was when I had the idea to get a hurdy-gurdy. And then when I got it and I like started going to this meeting, like talking to this guy about like, hey, how do I actually like make this thing work? And he was like, oh, you're gonna have to learn how to like spin cotton almost like a web, like, and I was like, oh, crazy. I got this idea like after I got bit by this spider, and I told myself this whole narrative about it. And the brown recluse spider is also called the violin spider because it has like a violin on its back. So like I got really into, and like the hurdy-gurdy is sort of related in terms of like it's a bowed string. So I got into the idea of like when we got this tarantula, whoever had it before us named it Fuzzy, and I thought that was so dumb and basic, and I was like, I'm not calling this tarantula Fuzzy. So I renamed it Sonora, and like that became like our family pet during COVID, was like Sonora the spider. And then I was always thinking about how the hurdy-gurdy, like I feel like the spider is the spirit animal of the hurdy-gurdy, or at least how I relate to the hurdy-gurdy. So like there's that other reason I named the track Sonora, is like I named the spider after the desert, and the track is named after the spider and the desert. And like, yeah, like I just said, it's like because like you spend so much time like spinning cotton around these strings and learning how to like manipulate this cotton into this like perfect thing that will be sonorous, no pun intended. Like, and I picked that track, but also because at that point, like in the drive, if you think about the sequence being the drive, it's like you're like deep in the Sonoran Desert at that point, and it's nothing but just like a black road until you get to the pull off to the biosphere, and you really need like an up tempo track to like get you through the last 10 minutes or so.
And that just says it all, I think.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, this record is truly incredible, and honestly, I couldn't stop listening to it once you sent it to us, and it's like I think it benefits because of it being an instrumental album. It's like I feel like I can put this on at any time, and it just perfectly soundtrack stuff. Like I haven't tried driving and listening to it, and I really think that that's the next thing I need to do is like go on a nice long night drive and play it, because after everything you've just said, that sounds like the perfect kind of atmosphere to let it sort of soundtrack. But yeah, I just can't congratulate you enough. Yeah, I'll have my carrot stick in my mouth while yeah.
Well, this episode is sponsored by the Truth Campaign, so yes, we do want to get that across. Well, Brian, it's always a pleasure to have you on the pod because, as I'll repeat myself, you're very generous with your answers, and we love just listening to all the little stories and details because you and your bandmates have all lived very interesting and lore-filled lives. So this is, it's always a treat to hear these little bits and pieces, and we're not going to expect you to explain the inside jokes because we weren't there. So yeah, but can I get a pack of Camel Lights? The album
of people that I don't want to do impressions of. So all right, sorry to speak over you.
Well, I was trying to do the promo for you.
Oh, sorry.
Can I get a pack of Camel Lights is out on Drag City on the January 30th.
With me?
January 30th.
Yeah, that Friday is, yeah.
Yeah, so everyone go check it out. If you're a fan of Geologist, if you're a fan of the Hurdy-Gurdy, if you're a fan of David Lynch's Lost Highway, it's got everything for you. I feel like your music has a lot of cinematic quality to it because obviously you are pulling sort of from some cinematic influences, and that was the first one that popped into my head. So maybe it was the subconscious effect of the famous shot of the yellow lines on the dark highway and all that. So there's a lot.
My roommate in college, I think, had that CD soundtrack. Does Smashing Pumpkins have something on the soundtrack or?
Probably, but it was like a big Nine Inch Nails thing, right?
9 Inch Nails.
Oh, maybe that was it. He was into stuff like that. So he got it whenever it came out. I remember the CD.
Well, I guess my only last question is, what do you think the future is with you and the Hurdy-Gurdy? Is it still going to be your primary instrument, or are you at the point now where it's been a number of years and you're trying to find the next thing?
I don't know. I think about that a lot. I still really enjoy playing it. And because I treat it a little bit more like a guitar, I'm it's not like you ask a guitar player if they're tired of playing guitar all the time. I do think I might. We'll see. I got this West Coast tour coming up with Bitchin' Bajas, and my life is kind of hectic these days with I got this dog that he can require some time. And my kids are, it's been hard for me to actually get the kind of all day work days in the studio that I used to have. So I was hoping to write new material for this tour with Bitchin' Bajas. So I asked myself that question a lot, would the new material be on the Hurdy-Gurdy, because I have to bring all that stuff anyway, because I want to play some stuff from the record. It's a question I haven't answered yet, and I'm not even sure I'll have time to write new stuff before that tour starts. Like I said, I thought the Guqin, this Chinese zither, I've been kind of obsessed with it in the same way as that I've been obsessed with the Hurdy-Gurdy for a while. But unlike the Hurdy-Gurdy, which my ideas, when I try them out, they either don't work and I quickly pivot to something that does work. This sounds cool. It's just the thing I thought my idea it only works in headphones. I just have to figure out the technical side of it, and when I try and do it out in the air, it's not cool. But you'll hear it in some upcoming projects before the end of the year. It won't be it's starting to feel just maybe like a thing in the arsenal as opposed to the main weapon, but we'll see. Right. No, well, I don't want to have it twice.
Well, we look forward to the Didgeridoo album, but like I said, the recent Hurdy-Gurdy album is out on Drag City, January 30th. Brian, thank you so much once again for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again. And if you guys can catch a Bitchin' Bajas show, you should do it. It's on the West Coast, right?
Yep.
And
I got a few with Danny Perez Stress Disorder. So we're gonna start in Portland and finish in Tucson.
Yeah, Brian, thanks so much as always. Yeah, taking the time to talk with us. It means a lot to us. It means a lot to the Animal Collective fans. And like Greg said, just really happy that you're willing to share as much as you are willing to share with us.
Yeah. Thank you guys for talking. Always appreciate it. We couldn't do what we do without people like you. Thank you.